I'm from Danville, Kentucky, born and raised. I grew up on North Street, um, and I have, of course, grew up with my mother and my father. My mother's originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. She moved down here when she was, I think, like 18. She had some family down here. My dad's originally from Adair County. He moved up here. Can't remember what age he was. Him and my mom met through church, the church organization they were in that we grew up in. I'm the youngest of three. My oldest sister, LaToya Payne, she currently lives in Frankfort, Kentucky, and my brother, David Payne Jr., he still lives here in Danville. And so I grew up here in Danville, went to Hogsett Elementary, and then went to Bate Middle School, and then from there, of course, to Danville High School. Trying to think, my brother and sister went to Center College. And so my mom, of course, wanted me to go. I was like, I'm not going to Center College. I'm not staying in Danville for college. So I went to Kentucky State University, and which is a HBCU. Loved it. Had great experience there. Met a lot of people and friends who I'm still friends with to this day, like real close with to this day. So I went to school there. Moved back after I graduated, and I started working. I started working for the city. My dad used to work for the city, so I was able to get a job with the city, like with the water department. Did that. I can't remember how long I worked there. Did that for a little bit. Stopped working there. Maybe did like a couple of odds and ends, and then I got a job for sales at a children's home. I worked there for 3 years as just like a regular youth counselor, and then I was able to get a position as a supervisor there. Did that for like another 3 years. And then I was able to get the job I currently work now as a state social worker. Started doing that. And I think I've been doing that for about 7 years. I think August would made it 7 years. So I'm still doing that. So my plan was to go to law school. But once I got to school, doing all those years, I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to go to school for a ton more years. I was like, yeah, I'm cool. Sometimes I think I wish I would have went ahead and went forward with it, but I was like, I'm cool. So yeah, I did that, and then, got my job, whatever. So it all kind of worked out. A lot of stuff as I look back over now, even not just in elementary, but throughout my life living here, it's kind of what I guess they say, hindsight's 20/20. You look back and you start to see some things like, wow, that was a little different. So now that you're older, you can look back and see like because sometimes as a kid in the moment, you don't really realize a lot of things that's going on. Mm-hmm. You just kind of like, hey, he's my friend, da 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 da. And then when you look back, you can see those differences and things of that such. But Hogsett for me was great. I had good experiences. Of course, I wasn't the best kid, best student. Had a few troubles. The funny story is, because me and my siblings are kind of like stair steps. So my sister and my brother, they were really good at school. My brother extremely smart. My sister, she's smart, but she's really a hard worker. Good in class. Me, on the other hand, could be a little bad, I guess you could say. So the teachers would be like, when it comes time for the next school year, they see my parents, beginning of school year, can't wait to have Kenny in the school, in my classroom. And my parents looking like, okay, you say that now. Mm. But I do recall a teacher, Miss Edwards. I want to say she was my 5th grade teacher. Very influential in my life. It's like she really took a liking to me and really like pushed me to do better. Because I want to say I was, pretty intelligent kid. I was just, I like to have fun and cut up, you know what I mean? So, but she really pushed me, and I never forget her. I reconnected with her, I think through Facebook, maybe a year or so ago. I hadn't heard from her in years. And we kind of had some conversations, but she was really influential. And it was other kids like me, other African-American kids. So it wasn't like I was just me and, I was the only African-American kid. So there was a lot of other ones, some that's from my neighborhood. So I was able to, to have that camaraderie. So it was a pretty good experience for me in the Hogsett. But Bate was different. Because it's really different from Hogsett, because you got all those years in school with people that you know. And then when you go to Bate Middle School, it's all the other elementary schools kind of combining. So it's kind of like that, kind of finding your niche and kind of like where you fit in, So I think middle school for me was kind of like that time period where I was trying to figure out kind of, okay, where do I kind of fit in? I didn't play sports or anything like that. I was athletic, but my parents wouldn't let me play sports. So I couldn't really find my way through that. So it was just like, and then again, I wasn't the kid that, was so into, studies and things of that such. So it's kind of like, finding your way to fit in with all those different type of, different kids now. And in Hogsett, I knew all the kids. So I was able, I was fine then, but, being in, a totally different dynamic. So for middle school, for me, it was a little different kind of, figuring my way out through that. But high school, it was kind of where you started to kind of see, okay, there's some stark differences between a lot of us. Like I said earlier, you just, as a kid, you grew up and you just think everybody lives like this, way you do. Not that my parents took really good care of me, but you start to see, okay, there's some differences. You got friends who got maids in their homes and things of that such. And you like, maids, like what is a maid? What does a maid do? Like, they do your laundry. And I'm like, what? Like, you don't do your own laundry? So like little things like that, you start to kind of pick up on. It's like, okay, yeah, there's some little differences. Heard other people talk about how Mr. Trumbo, he was a very prominent figure, not only in the school, but in his community, Mr. Trumbo. And the funny thing is he was our next door neighbor. So so I grew up with Mr. Trumbo. I've known him all my life. As far as I can remember, I've known Mr. Trumbo. So, but he was a very prominent one, him. And there were several others that really were invested in the kids. I can remember the principal, I want to say his name was Miss Angela. I can't remember her last name. Angela, something like that. It's a black lady. And just seeing that, that excellence, that black excellence, like the way she carried herself, and just seeing her in that position, was just kind of like, it's like, wow. So, because all my life I hadn't seen that. I had black teachers, but to see someone in that position was very, it really done something for me to see that and know and realize that, people that look like me can be in positions like that. So coming out of high school, I actually wanted to go to barber school. And my plan was to go in Cincinnati and go to one. And so my mom didn't really want me to. And so, because she figured I would really like just wild out and go crazy, although we had family up there. And so that was my plan. So we went and we visited barber school up there. Because like, I think I started at like 14 cutting hair. Like I would start on mine. I had a friend from school. He would let me cut his hair. So like I kind of got pretty good at it. And so like, and I have family members who have been cutting hair and doing hair and cosmetology like all of their life. So I've always been around it. And so we went to visit it, and they showed us around the whole school and everything, the barber college. And they was like, well, we have like an 8-month waiting period. So I was just kind of like, man, like I'm trying to go ahead and go and get started. So then we came back and I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna just go to college. I was like, I knew I didn't want to stay here in Danville and go to college. So it was like, kind of where I go. So started doing some research and then came across Kentucky State University. And actually my cousin, one of my cousins I grew up with, were around the same age, Jacob Payne, he was planning on going to college too. So we went and visited and everything. And then we decided both to go. So, which was great because we grew up almost like brothers. And so we went and then we enrolled that spring after I graduated. We enrolled that spring. So was out for a semester and then started at Kentucky State. Being there at Kentucky State University is almost like being at like a family reunion. It's just like kind of like that feeling of being around people that not only look like you, but from some of the same experiences as you. Some of them, different experiences, but it's just like that connection, like that kind of draws you. As you go through college, you're away from your family, so you really kind of trying to figure out this whole adulthood thing and this being on your own, and you got like-minded people that are going through the same thing. So it just automatically just kind of draws you together, and So you just kind of build off of each other, had experiences with certain people who lives were, totally different from mine, but we still just kind of like bonded. And then, we just kind of helped each other throughout whatever issues. And I mean, we would just get up and just like say, go to Louisville or something like that together, just off a whim. And just like through those different experiences, you kind of build that, bond and, that camaraderie. So I could just remember just like we would go on what we call it the yard. And that's kind of like the center part in the campus, where you just kind of hang out. Somebody would bring a boom box, people playing music, everybody. I remember one time it was real hot and like the air in the dorms had went out. So we all had went outside and got water balloons. We had like a whole campus-wide water balloon fight. We was getting chased by campus police. So like, it was just kind of like that fun, experience and things of that such. So it just you kind of built those bonds. And so with people, and so then as you graduated and you moved on, you still connected. Like I go back to like the homecomings and things, and then you reconnect with certain people, and then you just keep that camaraderie because you went through life, you grew up in life with those people, you know what I mean? So it just kind of like that bond kind of sticks from those experiences.
I want to start with the mask because I saw you were placing it to where it can be seen. What was the reasoning behind that?
So this mask, I got it when I went to DC this weekend. Mm-hmm. It says National Action Network, and that's the name for the organization that did the march. And of course, at the bottom it says "No justice, no peace." So that's kind of been the theme for a while. No justice, no peace. Until we all equally get justice, then we're not going to be quiet. Like you're not going to get peace. We're going to keep talking. We're going to keep fighting and all that. So
I feel like it's important for people to know, like how involved with these movements you are. So you went to DC. Can you kind of explain to people why you went to DC?
So I went to DC. I had heard about it, I guess, when Al Sharpton had talked about it. I think it was George Floyd's funeral. He had mentioned it, and I think they started playing out there. So I was like, wow, that'd be cool because, he was talking about how when Martin Luther King did his speech and they was going to have it there, and it was, I guess, 57 years since then to that date. I was like, that'd be cool, to be a part of. So I kind of started planning, like, I think I want to go talk to a few people. Then as time went on, it was like, kind of forgot about it. But as everything has kind of been amped up and ramped up, like I've seen myself more involved with a lot of different things, protests, behind the scenes, talking to some people that, work behind the scenes, work in policy, that stuff. So I really became involved. So when it came close to the time, I was like, yeah, I definitely got to go, be a part. And so I went. I'm glad I did. It was amazing. Amazing feeling being there. When the whole situation in Louisville, when they heard that initial protest, I actually went to that, and we was all marching, and then a little later on in the day, that's when, the police and the riot police came, and I felt like they were trying to incite, and which they did, and it kind of got crazy. So it was kind of like, first of all, when I was walking with all those people, all different races, all different backgrounds, it was just like a beautiful sight to be with all those people and be around all those different people for the same common cause. And then just to see that, and then it just kind of like ignited a fire, especially when the police came, they started inciting. You could see like that there's more to it than just this protest. For me personally, it was like there's more to it than just me out here protesting, yelling, shouting, we want freedom, all that. I felt like there needed to be more. So, I began to contact certain people, try to get in touch with certain people. And I actually, I had posted on Facebook because it was around the time when Charles Booker was, of course, he was running for the Senate, and his popularity was kind of up at the time. So I was like, I want to see how I can be a part of his, not necessarily his team, but his campaign. And so like a few people I knew were connected to like campaign managers and things of that such. And some of my friends from Louisville were friends with his wife and with him. And so I was able to kind of get in contact with some people from his campaign and was able, kind of, do some things. And when he came here to Danville, I was able to introduce him when he did his campaign here in Danville. And then after that, I just kept following him. And then with the protests in Louisville and everything, of course, the Breonna Taylor story, I'm sure everyone's heard of. I started, going around that, people that was fighting for that. And then there's a group of people that started this organization called Until Freedom out of New York. And so they had came down to Louisville a couple of times, came back forth, and then they eventually just moved down here to kind of build the community and, work with different community organizers. So I got connected with them and been doing peaceful protests. They had what they call direct action, and on Tuesdays, what they call Good Trouble Tuesdays, from that phrase from John Lewis. So got connected with them. We would go out to different communities, hand out pamphlets, talk to people, and they had like a food bank thing where we handed out food to certain communities and things of that such. So kind of those behind the scene things. I mean, I'll still every once in a while march and protest, but those behind the scene, and then connecting with other people who have who are in certain like city council roles and things of that such. So because I'm kind of thinking about going that route. So
what do you think is more impactful? Going out and doing the protests, or kind of doing the behind the scenes work and talking to people and educating people?
Got you. The funny thing about that, when you ask that question, because initially when I was out protesting and I seen other people that weren't, but they were making comments like on Facebook, I kind of like felt a certain type of way, like, y'all not out here, why y'all not out here, things that such. But then I began to realize, that everybody has different roles. So maybe you're not, like you saying, you wasn't able to go to DC, but there's other avenues that, you can play a part in any type of movement. Maybe not this movement, any other type of movement that you would be more effective at that I wouldn't be as effective at. Now, yeah, I don't have any kids, don't have a wife, so I'm free to go, to those protests, go to DC on a whim. I booked my hotel like the night before, so I'm able to, do those things. And so I had to realize that everybody plays a part, and it's not necessarily that part is any less important than the other one. So like being out there and doing all those protests, because they get results. Now people want to lump the looters and the violent ones with the peaceful protesters. They're not the same. For instance, my experience when I was in Louisville, we were downtown walking, and we was at the building. I can't remember the name of the building, but it was like one of the city halls or something like that. And so the people that had organized a march was marching. Then there was some other people. You could tell they wasn't from there. And they was throwing rocks and stuff at the windows and the doors. And the people that organized, they came to them, they was like, stop, like, don't do that. That's not what we here for. That's not what we came to do. So a lot of people want to lump them together, and they're not the same. But I had to realize that everybody plays a part, and if everybody does their part where they're effective, then as a whole it can be more important. Now, I do feel that there's a time and place. So like you have the protests, and if that's all that's been done, that's not going to change anything, because really all you're doing, you're yelling at the cops, you're yelling at the police, and they're really not the ones with the power. And so I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. They think, get out there, we loot, we protest, we yell, we scream. But if that's all you're going to do, those police officers, they have bosses. So they're just really essentially, some of them have other motives, but really they're just doing what they're told to do. It's their job. But if you can go above them, like behind the scenes, start attacking policies and things of that such, that's where the change is really going to come, because that's really what is the what is the thing that is oppressing us, is those policies and things of that such. And if we change those, then we'll see the difference in how we're being policed and how we're being treated in our everyday community. So we was marching just around downtown, maybe like a block or two. We would march around, and then we would stop, and some people would talk and say some things. And then I'll say about around 9-ish, you start to see police starting to form. And they got on this one street, and they all formed. They had their Billy Bats, I guess that's what you call them. They had like an armored truck back there, and they was lined up. I want to say like 2 rows of them lined up. I can't remember. It was more than probably like 15 to 20 lined up and then doubled behind them. And so they were standing there at first initially. And of course, the protesters, kind of stood in front of them. Some sat down, some linked arms, wasn't doing anything. So I started to see a lot of commotion. And then as I looked, I saw the riot officers, whatever their name is, I'm not sure. They started pushing forward and they was like hitting their sticks. And then I looked to my right because I had ran into one of my friends. He was kind of standing on the side. And then I looked to my right and then I saw like all this smoke. I'm like, well, I heard the boom first. Heard boom and I saw all the smoke. Like, what is that? Of course, it was like the tear gas. So the cops was here, riot was here, and there was some over here in another street, kind of this way. And then they shot it. And then I started to, like the wind started to blow the tear gas. And then I started feeling, of course, I'm choking, I'm coughing. They had people like kind of on the sidelines that had like this spray or something that they would spray and it would, help you be fine. And then after that, once they sprayed that, then those officers just came and they just like bum rushed the crowd. Like people were just running, just scattered everywhere. And it was at that moment like I left and I made sure my friend I was with, I was cool and left and got in my car and then I just left out. So, but just seeing that like the people, the protesters weren't doing anything violent, like at all. It was just kind of just standing there, just sitting there, and then them to incite I didn't think that was right. I didn't think that was right.
Did you ever fear for your life during that time?
I didn't. And it's funny because when I was doing the walking around doing the protests and walking with them, marching, I was on Facebook Live and my dad texted me. He was like, I think it might be time for you to come on at home. And of course, my mom texted like, you might want to come in. It's not safe. In that moment, like, I wasn't fearful. Like, it's kind of like you had that, I don't know if it's just an adrenaline or what it is, or it's just that all them years of just experiencing like the oppression and just seeing other people and what they're going through, and then that fight, like something has got to change. In that moment, it's like, listen, man, whatever happens, happens. I hope nothing bad happens, but like, listen, we got to get some change and I'm here to do what it takes. So honestly, I really wasn't fearful. I wasn't fearful in my life. I mean, I've had incidents throughout my life where I've been pulled over in maybe certain towns. I can remember in college being with some friends. We drove, I want to say here to Lexington or somewhere. And as we were leaving, a police car kept following us. Then it eventually pulled us over and I think it was about 3, 4, or 5 cops got out. And of course, they shone the lights in the car. I was sitting in the back and they started questioning us and things as such. And so like, I was a criminal justice major. So I'm trying to like think of some things to combat that. Like they asked certain things. I'm like, no, we ain't got to do that. Like, we ain't got to do that. And he's like, yes, you do. I was like, no, you don't. Like I'm going back and forth with them. But I wouldn't say that I was necessarily fearful, but it was a moment to where it was like, maybe it's just me personally. Like, there's not a lot of things that I truly fear. You know what I'm saying? I'm not crazy where I go do crazy stuff, but I've always been a kid that like really wasn't fearful, but that I have been in moments like that to where it was kind of in the back of my mind, like this could go really bad, like really, really bad. So
are there any like incidences that you had where your race was looked at negatively?
Oh, yeah. I can remember one incident, a kid did something, I want to say it might've been in high school. He did something and then the way he was portrayed was really horrible. He kind of had this stigma put on him. And then I can remember another kid that I had went to school with. And it's funny because it was a Caucasian kid and he would do a lot of things and would always get in trouble. Always get in trouble. You look back at that and you think like some people's past in life, some people had certain resources that other kids didn't have. And because of that, they were able to kind of skate through life with those certain instances where they were getting in trouble when the other kid who didn't have access to those certain resources couldn't. And then the way they were looked at is totally different. And it's just kind of something that that sticks out, and you kind of see that now, like, wow, had that other kid, the African-American kid, either had those resources or not been portrayed like that and looked like, because you think about it, like say the African-American kid, he does something, the way he's talked about by the teachers and the staff is not only is demeaning, but it you kind of like, you take on that thought process about that kid as well. So the other students, they start to treat him a certain way because of how he's been treated and how he's been talked about. So for me personally, I had some of those experiences, not as grandiose as some of the other kids I know, but I can recall getting in trouble or something happened, and the response to that towards me was totally different than, another kid that didn't look like me, you know what I mean? Or didn't come from where I came from.
So you grew up in a Christian church.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about your experiences with religion?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, strong foundation. My dad's father was a pastor. So of course he grew up in the church all his life. The church I grew up here in Danville, I grew up in, it's called Church of God of America. And my dad's sister was married to the pastor there, Larry Weathers Sr. And he, all my life, he's been my pastor all my life. He still is. He left from Church of God of America and started churches at Now Vision Church of Holiness. Being a kid, like, church was like all I knew. Like, it felt like we was at church like all the time. We'd have church when I was growing up, we'd have church on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and Sunday night. And then of course you have your other like different revivals and different services. And of course we was in an organization, so you have the church-wide organization meetings, different meetings throughout the year that you would go to. So church was, was my life. And also, the church I grew up in, we didn't do like sports and things like that such. So for me, being very athletic, like, I always knew my parents weren't gonna let me play sports, but I liked playing sports. So like I would just go with my friends somewhere to play sports.
And so why was that?
It was more so, I won't say it was a religious thing. It was more so of preventive measure, I guess you could say. Cause it was just kind of like a thing of like just not being in I guess they felt certain environments that would cause you to kind of stray away from like your upbringing and your raising and things that says. So it's kind of like a traditional thing that had kind of been passed through. And now, so it was kind of one of them things. I never really tried to understand it. It was just kind of like a part of it. Like, you can't play sports. So, it is what it is. But from my understanding, it was more of like a preventative type measure, I guess you could say, just to kind of, guess keep you grounded. Although not saying that you can't play sports and still, have that relationship with God and be grounded. But I guess that was kind of their thinking back then, because this is an organization that started like in the early 1900s. And to this day, like, it's like I'm a musician. So I've had the opportunity, my main instrument is bass guitar. I've had a lot of opportunities to travel a whole lot, playing music for some well-known gospel artists. If you're into gospel, you'll know some of the ones that I played for. But so I've had opportunities to like go away and make a career out of that to a certain extent. But I've always, and it's funny because like my friends would tell you who are musicians, like they would be like, can you come play this Sunday at this service? I'm like, yo, I can't do it. I got my church on Sunday. Like, I can't do it. And I would always do that. And so it got to the point where they would stop asking me. But for me, it was kind of like I don't want to say it was my saving grace, because I got my relationship outside of church, with God. But it was just kind of like something that kind of just kept me grounded. You know what I'm saying? Because there's times like where I'd be traveling a whole lot, you know what I'm saying? Going and playing and different things, but come back on that Sunday and be at my church, my home church. It just kind of, it was kind of like that thing that kept me grounded. So, man, I could talk about church all day. It's like, that's like, I literally grew up in church, like all that family always in church. So yeah, I got a real deep foundation in church.
But yeah, so you're into music. What else are you into?
Man, now with this pandemic, man, I work from home, so like I just be at home chilling. Like I never really was a one to be like in like gaming. Like I got a PS4 at home, but not really big into that. I did recently start getting into biking. I bought a road bike, and about a week and a half ago, I did 30 miles on that. Yeah, so my goal is to get to 50. So that's kind of become another thing that I really enjoy. Like I put on my headphones and just go. Like there's a trail in Lexington that goes from like the YMCA all the way to like the horse park near Georgetown. So I'll do that. And I really I really gotten into doing that. I don't know, it's because I'm getting older and doing, more little weird things like that. But yeah, that's kind of one of the things I'm into. But really, it's just music, like my job and my friends, just kind of hanging with them and family. So
what do you think heaven would be like?
What do I think heaven would be like? Man, that's interesting because you always, as a kid, like in Sunday school, you kind of like got those stories and, then what you read in the Bible as you go through church and you kind of, and also like where you grow up at, like the environment that you grew up in, you relate that to like everything else. So like as a kid, I'm probably thinking like, there's going to be 1 million African-American people in heaven, or there's going to be this and that. But like, as you get understanding, me personally, I can't say per se. I mean, I can look, through like the Bible and kind of see what it talks about how heaven's going to be. But honestly, I don't know. I think it'll just be, I think I could speak more to the feeling than necessarily the how it's going to look. I think it'll be like whenever you and I always go to this when I talk about like good feelings. You ever remember like when you was a kid or even as an adult, it's the same kind of feeling. Like when spring really breaks and you step outside and it's kind of like that 60, 70 degree weather and it feels amazing. The sun's out. You walking down, you see people like, hey, how you doing? Yeah. Like, it's like that great feeling, like, what people call that great vibes or whatever. I think that's kind of what heaven's going to feel like. Like your greatest moment that you've had in life, your greatest feeling, the greatest time that you had in life, it'll be that feeling forever. And not only just that, because like you can have that feeling and you can be speaking to everybody and you can see somebody that's just like down, but like everybody else will be feeling the same way. You know what I mean? So I think I can speak more to how it's going to feel, how I think it's going to feel.
You seen anybody or?
I'm single. There's a person of interest who I've been, I guess, I don't know what the term is now, kicking it or whatever.
Somebody last episode said, or a few episodes ago said entanglement.
Entanglement. Oh yeah, that's a new word for it now. I wouldn't necessarily call this an entanglement, but is a person of interest. Like I've had relationships before, like decent amount of time, and then after those, it's just kind of like, and I'm kind of cool on relationships, so I just kind of cooled out for a while, for a real long while actually. But yeah, I mean, it's a person of interest, so it's just kind of seeing how they go. Yeah, taking it slow. Yeah, seeing how it goes. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Now, do you lean more towards African American women, or you dated a white woman, or?
Yeah. African American. I just feel I connect more with them than I would say I probably connect more with them with an African American woman than any other. Not saying that I couldn't be in a relationship with any other type outside of African American, but I just kind of who I'm more connected with. Yeah. What I found out is like if you're not secure in who you are, like, it doesn't matter who you're dating or if it's African American, Caucasian, any other type of background. Like if you're not confident in who you are and secure with your own self, then you'll have trouble regardless, I feel like. And I just think it's just that, because I see a lot of people, you got some friends and people who are in relationships, and it's like they can't really function outside of a relationship. And like, if that's who you are, like that's really not good, because you're not really secure in who you are, as a person, and as who you are as yourself. So that way, if you are, then you come along with somebody that maybe they aren't either, and it could be a disaster. I've seen it happen, man. Like, it could be a disaster. So any type of advice that I would have is just first of all, be secure in who you are. Because if you are secure and you do come across somebody that, I guess what they call toxic, like you'll understand and realize, like, okay, yeah, this is not for me. I'm secure in who I am. I don't need to be a part of this, and you can walk away. But if you're not that secure, you'll stay in those relationships, and it could be an abusive relationship, and you'll think like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like, when in actuality, like, nobody deserves to be, in a situation like that. So life advice that I would give is really search for what your passion is. Like, trying to figure out what your passion is and make a life out of that. Because I feel like if you can do that, like, it won't be so much as work. Because when you have passion, you find hope within that. No matter what it is, like my job per se, I come across a lot of kids who've come from like terrible backgrounds. But because I'm passionate about what I do, I still find hope within it. But if it was just a job, like, everyday job, I'm just here, to get paid, do my job, like, I would either be despondent, want to just like walk off the job, like, I wouldn't. But because I have that passion about it, there's that hope that's tied to it, that I can make a difference. And then I'll get a message from a kid I haven't seen in years, and he'd be like, Mr. Kenny, I got a kid on the way. I got a job. I just graduated from college. I can remember things you would tell me. I didn't want to listen to it then, but like I understand it now. So it's like things like that. If you find something you're passionate about, then it won't just be like a job. It'll be something that even through the rough times, you can still keep pushing through. That's anything in life. If you can find what you're passionate about and somehow connect that to your job, or, some type of career, then it would be it'd make life a lot easier to get through the difficult times and things of that such. And just like in life in general, just learn how to be okay and be good with your own self. Like, sometimes I can sit at home like by myself, you know what I'm saying? I love being around, I'm a family person, love being around family, but being okay with yourself. And I've learned that a lot of people just they're not okay with just their own selves, you know what I mean? Like, they can't just, so I don't know. Just life advice, man. Just make the best out of life. Like, it's really not, life is serious, but it's really not to the point to where you can't figure it out and, make it through life. And a lot of things that we get upset and really hold on to. I was talking to a young man the other day, was at some event in the park, and he was just talking about like how he was so bogged down with life. And he was asking me how I kind of go through life, and things of that such. And I was just telling him, and he had all this stuff. I was like, I gave him a hug, and I was like, hey man, I said, just let all that go. I was like, man, you ain't gotta fight that. You ain't gotta deal with that. He was talking about other people that did him wrong. I said, look, brother, and I just looked him in the face. I said, just let that go, man. Like, cause they're probably going on with their lives and doing their own thing, and you're still holding on to that. And he just gave like this big sigh, and it just like, you could just see like that weight coming off of him.
Do you have any politicians that you look on favorably?
Yeah, definitely Charles Booker. Mm-hmm. He's definitely one. I'm trying to, make some more connections with him, and kind of, find my way through that with, just being connected with him. But yeah, definitely Charles Booker, just that wave he had. I don't want to call it a wave, but just seeing him and how he, how his campaign went, and just seeing somebody genuine like that, I definitely was inspired by that. Definitely inspired by him. Yeah.
Are there any that you don't look at too favorably?
Of course, I don't want to, we got our current president, and I don't know him personally. I just feel that as the leader, and this is just not for him, but anybody in leadership, you got to look at things as a holistic view. I feel a lot of people, and that's why I think this country is so divided. is because you have a lot of leaders who don't lead holistically. They lead just by what their per se, what their own thoughts and beliefs are, which is fine to be strong in your thoughts and beliefs. But if you're leading everybody, then you got to look at it holistically, as in, okay, this is what I want to happen. This is my goals, or how are my plans, or my beliefs, or my, whatever. But how can I make it to where everybody still feels comfortable? Everybody still feels okay, whether they don't agree with it or not. Like we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable, and where it leads to where I'm lashing out at you, you lashing back out at me, because we're disrespectful, or we allow others to be disrespectful and we don't speak against that. It's not, they're not looking at it from a holistic viewpoint. And so we're just in a time now where it's just like so much division, I feel, and it's stemmed from that.
Now, as a politician, are you going to be this fresh to death?
Hey, man, I'm going to try to, man. I don't know.
I said, ain't no way. He's rocking the polo hat with the polo. He got the green and the yellow on the hat.
Hey, man, I tried to, man. I love nice clothes. I try to, be a little more, strategic in how I'm spending my money, but like, I really like nice things. So, my opinion, because I've had conversations with Cheryl. She had me come speak at one of the events they had, and then of course my cousin Melinda, she's very, very involved. And I think if Danville could be open and allow the inclusion of African Americans and others in the prominent roles, I think you'll start to see those changes. You'll start to see the changes that is needed. Because I feel like, you think like all the prominent boards and members, like there's not really too much African American representation. So when you do have maybe they're deciding on certain things or what they're going to do for the city and the town, then you really don't have that representation from African Americans to be like, okay, how about we do this? Or, just a voice from them, to not only just a voice, because a lot of times, like I was saying earlier about just the protesting, that's cool. But if you're not able to partake in policy change and things of that such, then we'll be doing what we're doing right now for years and years and years, like we have been doing. But I feel like now is the opportune time to implement certain people, people that are really going to be there. And like I said, holistically, they're not only going to just fight for, just because if I'm in that role, yes, I'm a fight for African Americans, but I still got to fight for Caucasians as well, and for other ethnic races and things of that such too. So, but having people like that in those roles like that, I think will, and I feel like it might be kind of tough because, you got your good old boy system, which we all know, and that's really difficult to penetrate. But if they're able to do that and Danville be open to that, I think you'll start to really see some changes for real.
You said representation, and when I think of the word representation, I think of how African Americans are portrayed in media. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Man, I could talk about that for a whole nother hour, but we ain't got time. But man, it's crazy. And it's funny you asked that. And because I was in Louisville and the news people, I was downtown, news people came to me. They asked me several questions. And they was like, is there anything else we didn't ask you that you feel is important to say? I said, yeah. I said, the way we are portrayed, African Americans are portrayed in the media is completely off. Like it's sometimes it's horrible the way we're portrayed, because you think, like say African Americans, they do some type of protest or something, they always pinpoint the negative aspect. Or if an African American gets shot or killed by whether it's police or whoever it is, the first thing they do is go look at their background. They bring up, and not only that, the picture they showed, I had like a side-by-side picture in my phone where they showed a Caucasian guy that did something, and then they showed an African-American that did something far less, and then just the caption of it was like, for the Caucasian, I'm paraphrasing, this man was allegedly, or this man was accused of da-da-da, doing such and such and such. And then for the black guy, the African-American, it's like, this guy did such and such. They'll just go ahead and just say, like, he did not allege, not accused. It's just the way they portrayed is horrible. And I think it further perpetuates that ideal that this is how African Americans are, when actuality is not. It's just how they're being portrayed. Who did I look up to? I mean, you have like my dad, hard worker. So I definitely looked at hardworking provider for his family. Definitely looked up to him, my pastor, Bishop Larry Weathers. Definitely looked up to him because, he came from a struggle and was able to really make something, like overcome that and make something out of his life. Don't necessarily just one person per se that I look up to, but there's been a lot of people and a lot of people's stories and their life that I've kind of took from to better, my life per se. Like a lot of kids have potential, but they don't see somebody from their own community who's made it out, and it wasn't sports or it wasn't, an entertainer or something like that such. So I always feel that they gotta see something different, see that you can make it out in another way, you know what I mean? So yeah, I want everybody to have the feeling that you can, and I told my kids one time when I worked at the children's home, I said, do you understand and realize you can literally be anything you want to be in life? And this was around the time when Barack Obama was president. Of course, they all weren't African-American. I had some Caucasian, some Hispanic kids. But I was like, do you realize you can literally be the president of the United States? Like, you can be anything you want to be. You can be a doctor. You can be a lawyer. You can be anything. And a lot of them, they're looking at you like, dude, what are you talking about? No, I can't. But I'm like, yes, you can. So as a general thing, I would want everybody to have that feeling of I can be whatever I want to be and not feel some type of restriction to where it's like, okay, I can be this, but I can't be that. Yeah, we can't do that. Like, people that look like me can't be that. And that mentality will hinder a kid, you know what I'm saying? And it's something that could stick with them throughout their life. But if as a child they can realize I can be anything, I can do anything I want to, that empowerment, I would love to see everybody, not just African-American kids, but everybody to have that mentality that I can be whatever. Because if you feel that way about yourself, you're not going to project those restrictions or that hindrance on somebody else. You will view somebody else as, oh yeah, you can be whatever you want to be. I'm about to go be a doctor. You want to be a lawyer? Hey, yeah, you can go do that. And you won't portray that hindrance on them, like what a lot of times you see kid be like, I want to be this. Well, I don't know, it's tough, man. I don't know if you can do it. Other people, they try to do it. But if you can project that empowerment on if you feel that way, you will be able to project that empowerment on other people. So that's generally what I would like to see, just, that empowerment through, everybody having that empowerment.
People of color, we gotta stay down, never give up. I know that our people bury 6 feet down, they out to get us. You don't know the pain of having our knees down and our fists up. So don't you complain whenever our knees down.